The Decision by Kevin Hart, overcoming today's BS for tomorrow's success. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Samuel and I want to make self-growth normal. If you want to make self-growth normal, then make sure to smash that like button. Let's face it, if you don't know who comedian, actor, and producer Kevin Hart is, you don't live under a rock, you live under a person who lives under a rock. But you can probably tell from the title of this audiobook, it is a genuine attempt at self-help from Kevin Hart. His previous book, I Can't Make This Up, received stunning reviews, and that was a memoir, I think. I haven't checked it out just yet, but let me tell you, this audiobook kind of made me want to. While I describe my walk through his, what he calls his mental fitness boot camp, in this review I'm going to talk about all 6 parts of the book and the appendix, which is called Troubleshooting. It's a pretty cool name. I'm going to talk about my thoughts on it comedically, what separates it from other books of its kind, what I love about it, what I wasn't all too crazy about, why that's no reason for others not to check it out, and more. By the way, I never really got into his movies, never really looked into his work. I was never really a movie guy, let alone a comedy guy. But this dude got my attention for sure when he went to the most recent Grant Cardone's 10X Growth Con. Comedy was always a weird thing for me, and I didn't really find myself laughing at his jokes throughout the audiobook. Most of them, at least in the beginning. I kind of warmed up to it the further I got into it, but I genuinely found it strangely entertaining to listen to them because his delivery and how he structures them is so explosive and colorful. This guy knows how to package messages in ways that I just have not ever heard in any audiobook. And I am pretty convinced that without his experience and shine and skill, which again, I really don't know all that much about, but you can tell how experienced he is with this, it probably wouldn't touch this quality. And I imagine it wouldn't make nearly as much sense for him to make a move like this one, jumping strategically from a career standpoint into an exclusive piece of content. And by exclusive, I mean Audible. I'm not talking about OnlyFans or something. Whether or not this guy is on OnlyFans is none of my business. Part 1 is called the F yes moment. And there might be things in this audiobook that if you know self-help books, you've probably heard them before. Here's the cost of success. New challenges are always going to be here. Fame and success are harder to keep than get, etc. But I don't think that his general audience hears these things from people of his influence. Do they? Are these things are not mainstream knowledge, are they? Maybe I live under a rock. Maybe I live under a person who lives under a rock. This part I kind of picked up was about going above and beyond, because having just enough, you will find when you get to that point, is simply not enough. Part 2 is called Know Before You Go. It is displayed what you will need to leave at home here before you go into Kevin Hart's mental fitness boot camp. I love when authors do stuff like this. They turn the book into like this visualized sort of concept. Millionaire Fastlane by MJ DeMarco, for example, treats life from a financial perspective like some sort of a highway. And all these odds and ends of what you need to leave at home, to my surprise, they were emotions and mental states like jealousy, perfectionism, anger, fear of failure, comparison to others. And his viewpoint on these things, by the way, is very unique. This was one of my favorite parts of the book. It's refreshing. Have you ever been slapped in the face by cold water? It's kind of like that. I was very impressed. These are quite average topics in a book, I will admit, but Hart really knows how to put a flavor to them. When he talked about his past, like moving to New York, and how his mom was really like obsessed with order in the house, it just made me think of like, that's so weird. Like, why did he want to go into comedy? It made me wonder more about his story. And I really don't think he talked all that much about his story, interestingly enough, throughout this audiobook. How did he pick up all of these ideas? Because it really sounds like they're coming from straight up experience and connection to like-minded people. Part 3, Orientation. Orientation is the opposite of the previous part. It is like weapon training. Like, here's the tools you need for the boot camp. Some of the names of these, by the way, he just bends them notably. One of them is called What Isness, Cowboying Up, teddy bearing, sponginess, etc. I love when authors do this. It just says to me, you know, Sam, this book was
written by a creative person.
Oh, and that is just the daily pieces of mindset. That's just software. That's just ideas. Part 4 is mental fitness. In this part, there are also actual practices, also with interesting names. It just makes these like they sound like really interesting ideas that you haven't heard before. The No Chips Challenge and iconoclasm. That's a great word, but it's so much less complicated than it probably sounds to understand. And listening to this is the part where I was just like, wow. Okay, now I know why he called this audiobook The Decision. I feel like nonfiction from time to time is like, halfway through the book, I'm like,
oh my gosh, I'm starting to get it. The author is like painting this picture.
And now I'm starting to see where he or she is going with it and why he or she is calling it this title. I'm a visual learner, maybe clearly, but I produced my own music obsessively for 3 years, so sometimes I like to think that I can see things with my ears. Does that even make sense? I have no idea. Part 5 is the front lines. A buddy of mine on Instagram asked, hey, do you think that this audiobook is worth the time? Hey man, I say this to everyone. It depends what you're looking for in a book. Because honestly, I feel like this whole time I've just been like, I love this. There is a decent amount, fundamentally, of just repackaged advice, mainly toward the end, which there are people who would rather hear this advice from Kevin Hart than anyone else in the world. Me, it's a lot of stuff I've heard before, but I'm a self-development business and technology book reviewer. Most people in general have probably not heard a lot of this stuff. Let's face it, most people don't even come close to creating the life that they want to live. But I'm just saying that because Kevin Hart is the type of person who overachieves things and enjoys what he does at the same time. That is a balanced perspective to learn from. Would you agree? And yet for me, I got a lot out of the delivery and how he presents his points because it is super polished and advanced. So even as some sort of an entertainer, you can get this audiobook and check it out just for the sake of further educating yourself on comedic and what's the word? Energetic delivery. There's a lot to learn on multiple fronts. Not to mention, once again, Kevin Hart, of all people, his reputation and level of success, it only makes sense for him to put out something like this at this point in his career. Now on to troubleshooting. And troubleshooting, what do you think of when you think of troubleshooting after everything I just said? This is really interesting. He's like, it's really easy for me to give you all of this advice, but here is a real life example of how you can apply it in your life. Here is a very common example. Let's do more than one, right? This is like his responses to people who reached out to him, and obviously their names are being kept anonymous. Not 1, not 5, but 13 different situations he discusses and sheds light on. They're very different from each other too. One had to do with finding the right career, and another one had to do with dealing with your narcissistic ex or raising your child or children when you have one. Analyzing these scenarios like that is very abnormal in a self-help book of this structure. This and his perspectives in part 2, 3, and 4, particularly part 2. The topics in those parts are normal in self-help books. But I don't know if this is just a subconscious thing that I'm thinking this. Maybe it's like a branding thing. You can feel it in the audiobook, just the differences between how he thinks about them from how all these other authors, writers, recording narrator people have to say. Overall, I'm glad he put out this program. I'm glad I made the decision to get it and review it, and I'm glad that you watched this far. So let's go over some standout quotes from here. I'm going to say who I recommend the book to, and who other books you might want to check out afterwards. Quotes. Perfect doesn't exist. Perfect scores do, but perfect people don't. The ground only gets broken by people who are willing to break it. Those who judge can't do. Those who do don't judge. Direction 1. I recommend this book for anyone who likes comedy or Kevin Hart, but not self-help. If you like Kevin Hart but not books, check out Kevin Hart's other book, I Can't Make This Up. I've heard amazing things about it. Direction 2, again, if you like this book and you haven't checked out I Can't Make This Up, check out that book. I'm definitely gonna check it out. And hey, you really might like Grant Cardone's The 10X Rule. That and Obsessed or Be Average, because I can just hear where these guys think similarly from each other, just to really sell you on this, here. Life can be so much bigger than what you think, and there truly is no limit to what you can build out of it. The Decision by Kevin Gates. There's a link in the description if you guys want to check it out and read the reviews. That and all the other books that I mentioned in this video, if you want to check those out too. If there are any other books that you guys want me to check out and review, please let me know in the comments below. Also, let me know if you checked out this audiobook and you liked it. And also hit me up on Instagram. But hey, make sure to smash the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, because I don't get why people watch how long is this? Like 14, 15 minutes or something? They watch all the way to this point in my reviews and they don't subscribe. I don't really see why that is, but if you have subscribed and you want to turn it up just a notch and turn on that notification bell to get a notification every time I drop a new video, that would mean the world to me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. You can find me everywhere and I will see you then.